You should have wrapped up the previous one, so the stick, the bouncing ball, and the building one, those should all be turned in, ready to go. So I just want to cover some other stuff just to kind of do a warm-up to the rest of the assignment, the next assignment. So this is the Pokeball one. So by the time you're done, you're going to have the ball kind of rolling into frame. The arms are going to pop out. The helicopter part is going to pop out. The iris is going to move in and out. And then he flies some way. Okay, now you can customize this however you want. So this is like the story that I'm showing. You can have it do pretty much like whatever you want as long as you're showing off all the controls. So we made controls for these fingers. And I want to be able to see those controls for the fingers. So I want you to animate, obviously, the controls for the fingers because we did all those. We also animate, obviously, the arm going in. So make sure you show that off as well. It's hard to see in the wired view, but the lens is also kind of opening and closing. Okay, so you want to animate that as well. The helicopter comes up, spins around, and then he flies away. Okay. Now there is an important step that I'm going to say I forgot when I recorded the lecture, and I'm going to show it to you of what I forgot. Not that one. Okay. So here is the final video. So if I render it out, you'll see I have some basic colors on there. I didn't do anything fancy. It's literally just assigning different materials to the different areas, adding some basic lighting. And there you go. Woo. All right, so here's the difference. So look at this here, and look at that there. So these are about the same frame. I think they're pretty close to the same frame, 298 and 300. So if you look at the propeller, how much it looks like it's not spinning at all, and then in this one, it definitely looks like it's spinning a whole lot. Now with the expression that we put on that propeller, what happens is when you do motion blur, it goes to, let's say, frame 200. So it goes to frame 200, and then it advances a little bit, and then it rewinds a little bit, okay? So what happens is our expression doesn't update like it should be updating, okay? So it actually like doesn't update our expression. So our to Maya, the propeller looks like it's spinning just a little bit. So that's why we're only getting a little bit of a blurriness happening there. So close these. So what I have to do is I have to do what's called baking. And what it does is it takes my animation and puts a keyframe in every single one of my frames. And what that allows us to do is basically lock in our expression so that there is no more calculating. It's just locked in, okay? So just so you can see what that looks like, I'm going to go back to my previous scene before I did that. Okay, so here it is with the expression. So before you render, go to Edit, Keys, and Bake Simulation. And you don't really need anything from here except just to say that I want to do this to the rotate Y. That's the most important one because that's the only expression we have. So I'm going to say from channel box, everything else should be good, and bake. And it's going to go through, play my entire animation, and write out keyframes for every single one of those rotates. And then I can verify what it's doing by just looking at it in the graph editor. And now I can see that it does pretty much nothing, which is what it should do. Over here, it starts to ramp up, and then right here, it starts to go a lot higher. Okay, so this is something that we need to happen so that our motion blur on the propeller plays nice. Otherwise, you won't get the same effect on it. Okay, and then you can also play with these motion samples to enhance that motion blur as well. And you can also play with the shutter angle. This here, if you just leave it at 0 and 1, you'll be fine. This, you pretty much want to go like 0 is pretty much no motion blur. To like 360, you'll get a lot of motion blur. Okay. Excuse me. Cool. So that assignment, once it's done, you'll have a hard surface object that you've rigged and animated. In the industry around here, there's a lot of jobs where you'll be doing that kind of thing. You'll be getting a car, you'll be getting a whatever, and you have to rig it and then animate it. Okay, and the rigging part is mainly for you so that you can easily animate the thing over and over and over again without having to do a whole bunch of extra work. All right. Um, our next assignment is going to be an organic rigging assignment. Okay. So I'm not going to go into the actual assignment yet, but I just want you to, if you get a chance, you can start to play with some of the stuff. So under a window content browser, if you've never played with this or seen this, this is basically just like a bunch of free stuff that comes with Autodesk. Oh, it comes with Maya. So here's some characters, and then here's like this hand. And what's neat about this is it's basically just a good way to get started at doing some rigging practices. That way you kind of have a model there. Oops. I want to hide him real quick. I'll just throw him in a layer. All right. So when I did the Pokeball, I use joints. Okay. And so whenever you do something like a hand, you typically want to use joints as what you're going to be using to control it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a couple joints here. And I'm putting these joints at key spots where I need rotation, where I need some sort of movement on my hand. Oops, that one's too far back. That one should be good enough. I can tweak it if I need to. All right. So now I have just these basic joints inside here, and then I have to go through and kind of tweak them. So if you were to ever get into doing rigging as like your profession, because there are jobs that are just rigging, like that's the guy's job is just to rig stuff. You have to really understand how things move so that you can put the joints in the exact spot of where they would need to be. So I'm just kind of going through and just laying these out so that they're roughly in the same spot. I would spend more time with this if this was an actual assignment where I needed to make sure it looked perfect. Okay, so there's two parts to the joints. There's the round part here, which is the actual joint. That's the joint. And then there's the bone, which is this thing. If you click on the bone, it'll select the joint above it. So typically I'll grab the bone. It's much easier to select. Okay, so I'm just kind of placing these like in the middle of the finger. And what this is going to do is create a spot for our finger to bend from. All right, so now that I have this, I'm just going to orient things. There we go. And now I'm going to connect it. So in the Pokeball, what we do is we parent everything. Here's a piece of geometry, we parent it to it, and then it moves with that piece of geometry, or with that joint. Well, with a piece of skin here, we go to the skinning menu, and we're going to bind it. And what this means is that it's going to actually take the joints, take the skin, and put a connection between them so that one will influence the other. Just going to leave this at joint hierarchy. That should be good. I'm going to set that to dual quaternion. That's the better one. Interactive. Yes. Okay, everything else should be good. And I'll set that to a higher number also. All right, so on the bottom here, it's actually going through and calculating all the stuff. It's going to look, here's the joint, here's a piece of geometry. It's going to figure out how far from the joint is the piece of geometry, and then based on all the other geometry, figure out should this joint be affecting that piece of geometry. So basically, when I like wiggle this finger, that this finger shouldn't move too, right? Even though in Maya's world, it doesn't know what's what. It's just like, here's geometry and here's joints. So it actually does go through and try to figure out what should be associated with what. When you get stuff that's really close like this, you'll see, you may see some like little bit of pulling in these areas because it just doesn't know what part it should move. And this isn't going to be like a perfect solution. This is just be like a good enough solution. Okay, especially good enough for what we're doing. Some rigs would take you maybe a whole week to set up, as far as like a human rig, and make it look realistic. All right, so now that this is done, all of my joints are colored. So if I were to grab any one of the joints and just rotate it, you'll see that now the finger is actually going to move the correct way. It's fancy, isn't it? And if I were to grab all of my finger joints, so I'm going to grab each base, and then I'm going to shift click the next one up. I'm going to shift click the next one up. Even though they look selected, I'm actually grabbing them individually because I want them to rotate individually. And now I go to rotate. So that's pretty good for out of the box. That's pretty decent there. It looks a little bit wiggly, like a little bit rubbery. But like I said, it's pretty good for just out of the box. All right, let's check the thumb out and see how that looks. Yeah, we got some nice stretch in there. That's pretty good. Trust me, Maya's come a long way in doing this kind of thing. Years ago, this was like a horrible process. Like I would do this, and then the whole thing would basically just fall apart. Yep, awesome. Okay. Now they've even gone so far as to create some other controls. So I'm gonna not go there because I already imported him. I turn this guy back on. So in this case here, what I did was I created all those joints individually, and then what I would do is create a locator, and that locator would allow me to make controls so that I could open and close the hand, wiggle the fingers, do all this stuff. Now they have in the newest versions of Maya a quick rig. So what this is going to do is it's actually going to take the rig that, or the model that's there, figure out where the elbows are, the knees are, the shoulders, the hips, all the pieces of geometry, and it'll automatically create a rig around him. I just hit auto rig, which is how simple it is. There's the skeleton, and now it fits inside there, and now there's controls all the way around this guy. So now I can grab this and move that, and now I can move that piece of geometry. I can move that alien dude. Okay. Now he doesn't have any finger controls though, so their technology so far is kind of limited into what it has. Maybe there's a spot to add it. I haven't played around with it too much, but I can at least move the hands around. I can at least rotate these. You can see the fingers are actually like collapsing on themselves a little bit. Yep, there it goes. As I rotate this, his hand just gets like destroyed. Here we go. And then his shoulder will work too, so I can grab his shoulder and rotate it. His chest area here. Any of the items that are over here is stuff I can do. So I can scale it, but it doesn't really do anything. I can move it, and that will move just him moving side to side. I can rotate it. Okay, same thing up here. It has translates and rotates, so I can rotate this. And then I can move it, doing the same kind of thing. Okay, here's his hips, so I can do this overall. There we go. I can move them, which is going to move them side to side. Okay, I can grab each hip individually, and some of these don't work perfect. They're usually like for tweaking ones, like this. Like this is a tweaker one. I just need to twist his hip a little bit. Here's his foot, so I can move his foot. And then he has a knee aimer, so I can move his knee. So now it's aimed over here. And now this is over there. Rotate it a little bit. Grab his toes, maybe down. Yes, inside of the quick rig thing, where's that? Right here. There is a spot under this skeleton area or the definition area, one of these, where you could actually go through and grab stuff and move it. And it may even be you have to go back to before the rig was on there and do it step by step, like place the joints where they want. Are they good? Yes, go ahead and do it. I'll send you that. Mhm. And then you could add other controls inside there too. The idea with this is that they really want to take the technicality out of it and just make it so it's more about the artistic, more about the process of creating an animation, without having to get too in depth in some of those things. But it's not perfect. They're not going to be like if I were to grab, where's the animals? If I were to grab a raptor and a horse. Let's try that. Oh my God. There we go. So let's try the raptor first. So we'll go to the raptor. We'll close that. We'll say auto rig. Are you sure you want to delete the following? Okay. So it's going to delete this rig and add that one. Oh my God. Did it work? It kind of worked. It didn't do the tail, obviously, but did do the rest of the stuff. I could recognize where the hands are here. Pretty good. All right, let's see if it recognizes the horse. Before, it would not work on these type of things. If it works on the horse, I'm going to freak out. It didn't. Okay. So the horse one, you can see that it didn't work at all. It like registered the hands and the legs, or the front hooves and the chest area, I guess, is the same thing. So he doesn't really have any arms over here. And if I try to move any of this stuff, I think it's just gonna, yep, look at that. It's freaking out. Yeah, yeah, and that's the reason. Yeah. So very quickly though, you can get into doing this kind of thing. And just like the horse, like you could actually go through the step by step, and then you could create your own stuff. Like there is mirroring and all this other stuff you can play with. I don't get too deep into it because I don't really need to do any types of rigs like that. But for what we're doing for our assignment, we're going to keep it pretty simple as to using just some basic stuff. So in this case, we're using joints to rig a piece of geometry. Okay, so if you get a chance, play with the joints to rig a piece of geometry. The other thing that we can do, let me unlock these, is we can use deformers. So this is another way that we can play with stuff that is more soft body stuff. Um, I showed this before with our ball when we went to the squash. We could go into the factor and then we could squash it like this, right? Or we can grab this and do a bend, and we can bend the hand. Now, for something like this, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to use this kind of deformer. A hand is more like solid objects inside, or a solid object, or inside, yeah, a squishy object. So we would typically use joints. But what if I went to my content browser and I found a shark? Dang, it's addicted to that raptor. How did I grab him again? Shark? Right. I don't know. They might. They have so much cool stuff. Back in my day, we didn't have this kind of stuff. So for the shark, I could definitely use like this bend and give my shark the appearance that he is swimming without having to use a lot of joints, with just being able to play with that curvature. Now I can also isolate it, so I can grab just parts. So I could grab like this back area here and add that bend to it and just kind of reposition it. And let me turn this low bound off. There we go. And now I can make it look like his tail is wagging like that. Okay. Now, realistically, every rig that we will look at and when we get to the character stuff is going to have a lot of these things built in. It's never going to be just joints or just these deformers. Usually they use a combination of all of these kinds of things. Even on his little fin here, I can grab, oopsie, I can grab these. There we go. I can put a bend on this. I can rotate it. Where'd it go? Rotate it. move this up to where it starts, get rid of the low bound, and then just do some curvature bending here. Okay. Now, if we were going to do the shark, we could do it all through this. Like most of the shark stuff is pretty easy enough where we could get away with using these nonlinear type things. Sometimes we'd want to have joints in there so that we can create certain operations, or we wouldn't have a squishy area. Other things that we might play with inside of the rigging area under the deform tab is all of these types of things inside here are different ways that we could use to rig things, to animate things. This is a lattice, so there we go. So this is something we could use to grab pieces of the shark and make him bigger or make him smaller as we're animating him. So think of like a cartoon character, when their head gets like really tall, we could have these points kind of controlled to go inward or outward. We could even have more divisions. So this only has 2 right now. I want that to have 2 instead. There we go. So now I have basically 3 divisions going in each direction. Perfect. And now I can grab the lattice points and I can grab like the middle and I could stretch it out or squish it in. So this could be part of that rig, is that I have this as one of my features that happens. Delete that. There's also something called muscle inside of Maya. When you rig a character and you want them to look realistic, so if you look back at like the original Jurassic Park movies, they'd have these huge dinosaurs and their feet would like slam on the ground. And when they did that, it would look very fake if you just slammed on the ground and nothing happened. So what they would do is they would put muscles under the skin and above the bones so that when it did hit, the muscle would kind of jiggle a little bit and jiggle the skin, and it would make it look more realistic. So this is like the muscle is beyond the scope of what we're going to do, but if you want to do realistic rigging, that's where you have to start playing with stuff. There's also things like the soft mod. So if I were to grab, let's say this, and I use soft mod on this, it creates a little S right here, and that S is something that I could grab and I could actually animate this thing moving. Radius need to be higher. Yes, you do. A lot higher. Come on, bigger. There we go. A lot bigger. So now I can take this and I could animate this thing as well moving. So if a character had hair and I wanted to have controls for just kind of moving the hair around, I could use that soft mod to do that. What else? There's also clusters. Clusters are similar to soft mod, except they're more like solid. Like I can just grab that and just move it. There's wraps. Shrink wrap is a neat one. I'm just going to show this. I use this for like modeling stuff. I think it's a really neat deformer if I just make this bigger. So I have this piece of paper I want to be on top of the shark. So if I click these in the right order and I say shrink wrap, now that piece of paper is on the shark. I'll just give it a different color so we can see it. And I'll even extrude it so it looks thicker. There we go. So now if I move the shark, you'll see that that piece of paper kind of goes with it too. Or if I were to animate the piece of paper kind of sliding around, you'll see that it moves with the moves around the shark as well. Okay. Right. It'll just stay there then. Okay. On any of the deformers, if you delete the history, it gets rid of the deformer, but it keeps the shape of whatever it was at. Okay. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind, that if you delete history on any of the stuff while you're rigging, it will like freak out and just stop working. Okay. Even on that character, where is biped? Wolf. I don't know if that worked. I think it did. Skeleton, quick rig. Yes. There we go. So right now he works. So if I grab any of these controls and move him, he'll work. If I click on him and delete history, those controls will no longer work. Okay. So obviously this is something that people have done in the past where they've gone through and animated their entire character and then they delete the history and then everything is gone. So you definitely don't want to do that. Okay. Deform. So there's a lot of different ones that are inside here that you could really play with and tweak and modify. We're not going to touch on most of these. But there are some really cool ones. And I do recommend that if you like get a chance, go through YouTube and they have videos that are just like, what are the deformers? And they'll go through each deformer and see what each deformer does. Some of them are really neat in what they've done inside of Maya now. Let me see if I can find one. Just grab this, I guess. So one of these is blend shapes. Blend shapes. Where's that button at? No. Shape editor. There we go. Okay. So I made this a blend shape, and I'm going to go to the shape editor. And what this is going to allow me to do is create different shapes with this guy. So I've already made a blend shape. I'm going to say add a target to him. And I'm going to call this one eye lower. And so what I can do is take my geometry and just move it. I'm just going to take this piece of geometry and just pull this down, maybe scale it some, whatever, okay? I could even go into my sculpt tools, there we go. Come on. There we go, perfect, okay. Mesh tools, sculpting, grab. There we go. Okay, so I'm just grabbing some of these points and just kind of pulling them down. And this is going to be my new target. So what this is going to allow me to do is I basically created a slider that I can go and change the geometry here. So if I have a character and I need him to wink or something, this is how I can create that winkiness by doing this. Then I can add a new target and then grab this and then pull this down. And now I have another target that's that. So I have this one for this side, this one for that side. I can add a new target and inflate. Where's inflate? He does. Poor guy. That's just too foamy, I guess. There we go. That was, yep. Perfect. Okay. So pretty much anything that's on there, you can go and tweak any of these pieces of geometry. So there's lots of different tools for creating the look and the animation that you want. Just do another one right here. And you'll see that they all like add on top of each other. So it's not like, one's going away and the other one's replacing it. Control, drag that in. And see all of these like still work in conjunction with each other. They just kind of figure out like what's new in this one, and then they adjust accordingly. Very cool. Okay, so those are more of the deformers type things that you can use to tweak soft body stuff. So if you get a chance, play with some of these things, just kind of go through and see what's available, because you never know what kind of job you're going to get where they're going to say we need this thing to happen or that thing to happen. I've had people say I need to animate a piece of cloth, I need to animate a balloon popping, I need to animate an airbag, I need to animate all these different things. And knowing some of these can definitely help compared to trying to do it another way. Oh, this is a funny one too, if I can remember where it is. It's not that. It's not that. Yeah, sculpt. Maybe that's it. Yep, that's it. So this one here, it's like this ball that's inside him, and you can move it around. Now there's another locator that's inside this. Like you get a sculptor and this locator, and you move this, and now nothing is really getting affected too much. It's not until you start taking the ball away from that that things start getting weird. And you'll see even the locators here or the deformers there are still working in conjunction with the other stuff. Ooh, it's so creepy. Right. This is the best part about mine. Just like, what can I create? So weird. All right. So enough playing around. So play with those if you get a chance. While you're rendering, it's a good idea to go through those, and it's also a good idea to go through some of those rigging tools that we played with. So set driven, if you're not comfortable with it yet, play with set driven more. If you're not comfortable with expressions, just do some basic expressions. They don't have to be crazy. And then we'll go into more rigging things next class as well. Okay. All right.